So think for a moment about what you did yesterday. What you did in the morning, afternoon, evening. What conversations did you have? What kinds of meals did you eat? If you're able to recall some of this information, it's because you have a memory of what happened. And in this chapter, we're going to take a look at memory and see how the brain literally changes to leave a trace of our life experiences. And we'll additionally see that memory is not just about our life experiences. Those would be called episodic memories, but also the ability to learn new information and to learn new skills. And so there are a variety of different types of memories, and in each case, the nervous system does create new growth and new synapses to allow us the ability to learn and remember. And so this chapter, we're going to be taking a look at that. We're going to start off by looking at who is probably the most famous patient in psychology, patient HM, Henry Molaison. We're going to see that his story is in many ways very tragic. He lost all ability to form new episodic memories, to form new memories as he lived his life. And you can imagine how devastating that would be and how debilitating. From that tragedy, we can learn, though, how important memory is, and also how the nervous system is involved, and how, especially the temporal lobe of the brain, and how it is involved in forming these memories. So we're going to start off by looking at the case of HM.
Allow me now to introduce you to a true pioneer. This woman earned her first degree from Cambridge in the 1930s. By 1944, she moved to Montreal, expecting to stay only a year, but she never left. With immense determination and, as she puts it, intense curiosity, she has spent her career investigating the mysteries of the human brain. Working with the legendary Dr. Wilder Penfield, she challenged conventional wisdom and wound up creating an entirely new field, neuropsychology. Meet Dr. Brenda Milner, considered by many to be the world's foremost expert on memory.
You know, patients would come to me, and especially the ones with left-sided lesions, and they would say, "Oh, I have such trouble with my memory." And I wasn't there to study memory, you know.
But she listened and observed.
If a patient comes to you and says, "I have trouble with my memory," you should not reply, and I didn't. You shouldn't say, don't talk to me about memory. I'm here to study perception, or I'm here to study the motor system. Don't want to know about memory. You should be very quiet as a mouse, and you should listen, and you should say, what kind of memory? And, well, if this is what the patient feels is wrong with them after this surgery or after this epilepsy, I should study memory, you know? And so from then on, because the patients said they had memory trouble, I switched the focus of my research to memory.
She got very hooked onto this idea of memory and developed her own tests and her own techniques for working out the details of these memory things.
Milner was concerned and challenged by the unexpected outcome in two patients who had developed severe memory impairment after what had become a standard procedure for temporal lobe epilepsy.
So Heb had supported me for 1 year on his own funds, and I'd given up my tenured position at the U of M. Heb thought I was really foolish. And I didn't know what I was going to do at the end of the 1 year. But then when we ran into this memory problem, Penfield came to me and said, "We need you. You have to come." And he found me a little office at the neuro and so on. But neither Heb nor Penfield gave me a penny for anything. If I wanted to do a test, I had to photocopy something, and I really had no money.
Milner pursued her methodical testing of Penfield's patients, and in 1955, Penfield and Milner presented their findings on post-surgical memory loss to the American Neurological Association. It caught the attention of a Connecticut neurosurgeon whose patient, known as HM, had suffered a profound and permanent loss of recent memory after a surgical procedure. Milner was asked to study HM, which she did over a period of several years, though HM never remembered her from one visit to the next.
I think one of the characteristics of Dr. Milner is her methodical, persistent, and very well-organized testing of these patients.
It was one such test, the mirror drawing test, that revealed to Dr. Milner evidence that the human brain had more than one memory system.
For all of us, you or me today, whenever you get to the point of the star where you have to change direction, your hand does this kind of thing, but then by doing, not by telling yourself what you ought to be doing, but just by doing in some way, by practice, you gradually improve and you keep a nice smooth line, and at the end it's beautiful. That is what you and I would do. But it's also what HM did. HM, over the 3 days that I tested him, and I have a lovely learning curve for this, that he got better and better, and he was doing beautifully at the end. And he had absolutely no recollection of the 3 days training he'd done on this. It was, that one trial was unique to him, experience, and he was proud of himself that he had done it so well. No recollection at all of all that had gone before. And it was this dissociation, between his total lack of, between what he was aware of and what he had achieved, that was to me very exciting. If anybody asked me, the really exciting moment, it was actually then, looking with my eyes very wide at this going on. And this was early evidence that there's more than one learning and memory system in the brain,
Milner's insightful analysis of HM's memory deficit is known today to just about every first-year psychology student, notes David Coleman, director of the MNI.
She's been able to take essentially a single patient, this fellow HM, and by asking the right questions, tease out the fundamentals of memory in a way that no one did previously.
Milner's discoveries in the 1950s began attracting new students and postdoctoral fellows, and at long last, some research funding.
So Henry Molaison had frequent epileptic seizures, and the treatment proposed for him was bilateral removal of the hippocampal formation, the amygdala, and the surrounding cortex. So I just want to point out where his lesions were. So there's this area here in the temporal lobe, and it includes the hippocampus shown here, kind of looping around. But also they removed the surrounding tissue and the amygdala. And because they removed the amygdala, it's thought that that's why he was not agitated and horribly upset, because some other individuals who've had bilateral damage to the hippocampus and have very similar amnesia experience a lot of distress because of the sense that they don't know where they just came from, for example, or what they were doing, and that can create a huge amount of distress in some individuals, and HM did not experience that at all. He really dealt with it, coped with it really well. And you can see here some of the damage as well, where you can see the areas here in the temporal lobe that were removed. And again, because it was bilateral, his amnesia was particularly profound. And you might be curious as to where the name hippocampus comes from, and it actually comes from the seahorse. So the scientific name for seahorse is hippocampus, and to some of the early researchers, the structure of the hippocampus does kind of look reminiscent of a seahorse. So that's where that comes from, just a little fun trivia. Now let's take a look at amnesia and the two different types of amnesia that an individual can have. So if we think of a timeline, and we start here, this is, birth, and then at some point here, this is where HM had his surgery. His memory loss that started for new things that happened since his surgery and going forward, That would be an example of anterograde amnesia. It's the inability to form new memories. And that never went away. In addition, he had some retrograde amnesia, a loss of memories for up to a decade before the surgery. And this is a common pattern with damage to the temporal lobe, that there can be anterograde amnesia, but we don't see nearly as much retrograde amnesia.